Hello, and welcome to the Filecoin Ecosystems module. In this module today, I'll be going over some implementations of Filecoin that you can use to manage your storage node. So let's start off with why a Filecoin implementation is even needed in the first place. Imagine trying to drive a car without a steering wheel. You know where you're going, and you can see where you are going, but you have no control over it. A Filecoin implementation is like the steering wheel to your storage node. You can use some commands to see your sealing progress and other commands to manage it. This is how a Filecoin implementation can get you to your destination. Let's take a look at what implementations are available for you to use and what ESPA will recommend for a Web3 storage provider at the enterprise level. There are currently 4 major implementations: Fuhon, Forest, Rust, and Lotus. Lotus is currently the most mature implementation that can be used at the enterprise level, which is also why PiKNiK uses Lotus as well. However, it is always good to consider all of the options available, which is why we will briefly go through each of them and discuss their advantages and disadvantages. In the diagram to the right of the screen, you'll see that Lotus is the most fleshed out implementation of the 4. It has all of the features that the other 3 implementations have and more. Now I'll briefly cover Fuhon and Forest first, as they are currently the least 2 developed implementations of Filecoin based on our previous research. So Fuhon uses the Rust libraries alongside C++ in order to compile. It has the convenience of having a singular command known as cmake to set up and install Fuhon with. The advantage with Fuhon here is that you do not need to manually download and install packages one by one, whereas with Lotus, the packages are downloaded and installed one by one, resulting in a few more minutes of setup time. However, all of the Filecoin implementations only need to be compiled once, which makes this Fuhon advantage negligible at a large scale. This is why we have determined that there are no noticeable advantages to using Fuhon over Lotus. Next up is the Forest implementation. Like Fuhon, Forest also uses Rust. And while it has more functionalities than Fuhon, these 5 functionalities are also supported by Lotus. There is one feature that separates Fuhon from Lotus, which is the built-in process, metrics, and monitoring feature. However, even though Lotus does not currently have this feature built in, it is still able to monitor processes and metrics. For example, combining the Linux command watch with a Lotus command, Lotus miner info, will enable you to see metrics such as your block reward earnings. I'll be discussing these monitoring tools much further in depth after a later time in Module 4b for servicing and maintenance. Moving onwards to the Venus implementation. The Venus implementation is definitely more developed than Fuhon or Forest. If you look at some of the commands in the picture on the side, you'll see that there are a lot more features than you previously saw with Forest or Fuhon. There are some features that overlap with Lotus, but in the end, Lotus still surpasses the Venus implementation in maturity and features available. That brings us to the main key feature that separates Venus from Lotus, which would be reward pooling. Reward pooling is a feature where the total capacity of all the storage providers in the pool are combined. This results in more block rewards, since more capacity on chain means more power and therefore more block rewards. However, as a large-scale multi-petabyte or even exabyte enterprise-level storage provider, this feature would be irrelevant to that storage provider. Before we start talking about Lotus, it is important to note that the previous 3 implementations, Fuhon, Forest, and Venus, are all Chinese-based implementations or softwares. Although not inherently disadvantageous, this could be a potential barrier to entry due to lack of support or even just the language barrier itself when working within the software. With that said, that brings us to the 4th, final, and our favorite implementation of Filecoin, Lotus. Lotus is written in Go and is the most mature implementation by far, with the most features and functionalities available. Having been created by Protocol Labs, it has been used the longest in the production environment by many different storage providers as their primary implementation. Other implementations of Filecoin, such as some previously mentioned, even integrate Lotus into their own software. With Lotus, we as PiKNiK have been able to seal thousands of storage deals, resulting in hundreds of terabytes of real data being stored on our nodes. In addition to that, the retrieval aspect is currently being developed and improved upon. Whereas with other implementations, both of these features are still being developed, including storage deals resulting in their inability to store data. And isn't the whole point of Filecoin to store real and useful data? As briefly mentioned before, Lotus requires the installation of Rust and Go, which is simple to install. Then you can compile the Lotus binary, which comes with a suite of command line applications. There are 4 main applications of Lotus that come with the compiled binary. The Lotus node communicates with the blockchain and the network. The Lotus miner is the command center of all the operations. The Lotus worker handles the specific parts of the sector sealing process. And the Lotus market controls all storage and retrieval deal processes. So a little more information about the Lotus software. All of the Lotus applications mentioned in the previous slide, Lotus Miner, Lotus Worker, Lotus Market, runs as a daemon. A daemon, put simply, is a process that runs in the background of a server. Once the daemon process is up and running, you are able to interact with the different components, the chain, the Lotus Miner, Workers, and Market, through the suite of commands that were installed. Some of the commands listed here, and within each of these, comes with their own set of commands. For example, Lotus Wallet List will list all of your Filecoin wallet addresses, while Lotus Wallet New will create a new Filecoin wallet. We will be going into much further detail for all of these commands in the upcoming modules. Lotus is a full-featured client, which means it has a set of protocols and tools, as well as node architecture built to interact with the Filecoin network. Lotus uses the combination of JSON, RPC, and APIs to manage an interface with your servers that run Lotus. With the use of APIs, it is much easier for software developers to build applications on top of Lotus. Now we're at the end. To wrap it all up, it is safe to say that Lotus is the most mature implementation. Its implementation makes it easy to build applications on top of it. And finally, Lotus has all of the features and functionalities needed to create a large-scale, enterprise-level storage provider. And that's it. Thank you for listening. Please leave a comment if there are any questions.